After my father's funeral, I tried to organize his workshop. He was a veteran, and I wanted to turn it into a memorial. My neighbor called the city and reported me for constructing a militia training center. I thought it was a sick misunderstanding. Then the ATF knocked on my door. When they left, they whispered that someone had sent in anonymous photos, doctored ones, with my dad's name replaced with a foreign alias. What they found hidden in my neighbor's attic made national news. I grew up in Rock Hill, South Carolina. It's not a big city, but it's not some quiet little town either. You got people who've been here for decades, old families, military types, teachers, small business folks. My dad was one of those guys everyone kind of knew, even if they didn't really know him. He served in Vietnam, came home, worked construction, kept his head down. He didn't smile much. Didn't talk a lot either. But he was solid. He was there. When I was a kid, he'd sit in his workshop for hours, working on engines, building shelves, fixing lawnmowers for neighbors. That workshop was his place. When he got older and started to slow down, it just sort of sat there. Still clean, still full of tools, but unused. He died in March. Lung cancer. The funeral was quiet. Military honors, flag folding ceremony, a few vets in attendance. Nothing flashy. When it was over, I stood there next to his grave longer than anyone else. I never really got to know him the way I wanted. But standing there, I felt like I owed him something. That's why I started cleaning up his workshop. I wanted to make it into something. Not a museum or anything weird, just a space that felt like him. A place to remember him. I called it a memorial in my head. Put up a few old photos, arranged his medals in a shadow box, even set his boots down under a bench. I wasn't building anything new. Just reorganizing, honoring. That's when things started getting strange. At first, I figured it was just coincidence. A city code enforcement guy showed up one morning. Said someone had reported construction in the backyard. I told him I wasn't building anything. Just cleaning out my dad's old stuff. He asked if I was putting in new wiring or adding any structures. I said no. He looked around, nodded, left. No big deal. 2 days later, I got a letter from the city. Said someone had filed a complaint about unauthorized use of residential property for military-type operations. I swear to God, I laughed out loud at first. Thought it was a mix-up. But I called the city. They said they couldn't tell me who made the complaint, it was anonymous. I started feeling uncomfortable. I kept working on the shed, but I looked over my shoulder more. Then I saw the drone. Small, loud, one of those camera ones. It was hovering outside the workshop window while I was inside rearranging shelves. I stepped out, and it zipped off. I watched it fly down the street. It landed in someone's backyard. 2 houses down. My neighbor Gary's. Gary Sanders. Retired. 60-something. Lived alone. Didn't wave. Kept to himself. One of those guys who complains about how the world's gone soft, and rants about fake veterans getting handouts. Always had something to say about the government, or immigrants. I never liked him, but he never said much to me, so I left him alone. Until that moment. I didn't say anything that day. But I started watching. A week later, I got a knock on the door. 3 guys. ATF. Suits. Badges. One of them had a tablet and showed me a few photos. These yours? The pictures showed the workshop. But not how it actually looked. They were edited. One showed a foreign flag, some Middle Eastern country, on the wall. Another showed military posters in Arabic. Another had a blurry image of a man, not my dad, but labeled with his name replaced by a fake foreign-sounding alias. They were fake. Obviously fake. The lighting was off. Shadows wrong. But someone had gone to a lot of effort. "We got these anonymously," one of the agents said. "We don't think they're real, but it's enough to investigate." I let them in. I showed them everything. They were respectful. Took pictures. Asked about my dad's service, about his medals, his old uniforms. I explained everything, told them I was just cleaning up, making a quiet tribute to my father. They didn't arrest me. They didn't even seem that suspicious by the end of it. But when they left, one of them pulled me aside. "Watch your back," he said. "Someone's going to a lot of trouble to make you look dangerous." I couldn't sleep that night. The next few days I didn't work on the shed. I installed cameras around the house instead. Got a doorbell cam. Put motion sensors inside the garage and back patio. I don't have a lot of money, but I spent what I had. And then something happened that made my blood boil. I came home from getting groceries and found the garage door cracked open. It had been shut when I left. Nothing was missing, but the bins were open. One had my dad's old Navy duffel inside. It was unzipped. A few things inside were moved around: papers, his dog tags, some faded letters from the 70s. I called the police. Filed a report. They didn't find anything. But that night, I saw the drone again. This time, I didn't just watch it fly off. I chased it. Ran across yards, barefoot, holding my phone. It landed again in Gary's backyard. I jumped his fence, didn't care. The drone was sitting there, cooling off. I took a picture of it. Gary came out screaming, "Get off my damn property!" I snapped a photo of him too. He tried to grab my phone. I got out. I gave the footage and the photos to the cops. They said they'd look into it. The next few nights, I hardly slept. Then I saw something on my backyard camera that sent chills down my spine. Two men, around 2 a.m., walking slowly toward Gary's house. They were carrying something big, long, wrapped in a dark tarp. They went around the side. One of them climbed a ladder. The other handed up the object. They disappeared into the attic window. I called the cops again. This time, I also called the ATF agent who had given me his card. They came fast. But not right then. They came back 3 days later with a search warrant. Guns drawn. Vans, black SUVs, full-on raid mode. They raided Gary's house. And that's when everything flipped. Inside Gary's attic, they found crates of weapons. I'm not talking about a few old hunting rifles. I'm talking about cases of illegal guns. Some were foreign. Some were modified. Parts to turn semi-automatics into full auto. Blueprints for 3D printed weapons. Some documents had writing in Russian. Some in Arabic. There were even fake IDs. Passports. Some with Gary's face, different names. One of them had a UN logo. There was evidence of international communication, email threads, chat logs, wire transfers. Names of people flagged on watch lists. And tucked in a folder, there was a list. It had names. Mine was on it. Twice. The FBI got involved. Homeland Security too. Local news ran with it. Domestic terror plot foiled in Rock Hill. But it wasn't until later that I learned how close I'd come to being ruined. The photos? Gary made them. He used that drone to take pictures of my shed, then edited them. Replaced real images with fakes. Sent them to federal agencies anonymously. Tried to make it look like I was the one prepping for an attack. He wanted me arrested. Or worse. And I think I know why. Gary wasn't just hiding weapons. He was part of something bigger. But I'll get to that. After the raid, things in Rock Hill went quiet for a few days. News vans sat outside Gary's house. The FBI put up tarps and blocked off the street for hours. Neighbors stood on their porches, whispering, watching, trying to piece it together. Some of them gave me looks, half curious, half sorry. A few offered awkward waves. One woman brought over a casserole like this was some kind of funeral. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I stayed inside, watched the footage over and over again. My name had been on that list. Twice. Nobody from the FBI would explain what that meant. Not yet. Then I got the call. It was Agent Colburn, the same guy who'd whispered to me the first time. His voice was tight. "We found something else," he said. "We're going to need you to come in." I drove to the field office in Charlotte. They walked me into a cold room, sat me down, and slid a folder across the table. It was filled with surveillance photos. Of me. Walking to the store. In my backyard. Picking up my dad's mail. One photo showed me inside the workshop, taken through the window. Another showed my car parked outside my house with a timestamp from 3 months earlier. Before my dad died. "Do you recognize this?" Colburn asked. He flipped to the last page. It was a blurry scan of a shipping receipt. Addressed to my father. But the name was slightly off. One letter wrong. And the return address? Northern Idaho. The package, they said, was never recovered. But Gary had kept the receipt as part of a larger file. The working theory was that Gary had intercepted it, or maybe used my father's name to smuggle something into the state. But what that something was, they didn't know. "What does Idaho have to do with anything?" I asked. Colburn looked at me. His mouth pressed into a thin line. "There's a training compound out there. We've had eyes on it for years. We didn't know Gary was tied to it." That's when it hit me. I remembered something. A conversation my dad had with a stranger in the driveway, months before he died. I only caught part of it. He was upset. Told the guy to get the hell off his property. When I asked who it was, he brushed it off. Said it was just some old army buddy who lost his mind. That wasn't just a buddy. That was Gary. They showed me the visitor logs at the VA clinic my dad used to go to. Gary had signed in once, under a different name. That's how he got close. That's how he started watching. I didn't know it at the time, but Gary had been planting this frame up for almost a year. Maybe longer. And then came the worst part. They found a second list. Buried in a thumb drive under a loose floorboard in Gary's basement. It was labeled "Clean Up." It had 5 names. 4 of them were crossed out. The 5th was mine. Colburn leaned in. "This wasn't just about making you look guilty. He planned to make you disappear." That's when I lost it. I slammed my fist on the table. Asked them why I wasn't warned sooner. Why they let me live alone for weeks after the raid. His answer chilled me. "We had no idea how deep this went. Not until we cracked his old laptop. And even then, we thought you were part of it. At first." I stared at the folder. At the photos of myself I didn't know existed. This wasn't just about my dad. Or the workshop. Or some crazy neighbor. This was bigger. And it wasn't over. Because 3 days later, my house was broken into. Again. But this time, they didn't leave anything behind. They took something. The black journal my dad kept. The one I'd left locked in a drawer in the workshop. The one I hadn't told anyone about. And the next morning? Someone lit Gary's house on fire. The fire burned fast. It started just before dawn, and by the time I got there, half the house was already gone. Flames poured out the attic windows, where they'd found the weapons. Cops taped off the entire street. ATF showed up again. FBI vans rolled in right behind them. Gary's house didn't just catch fire. It was torched. The fire marshal called it suspicious. No lightning. No faulty wiring. No gas leaks. But the strange part? No one had seen who did it. No neighbors. No security cameras. The street went dark around 3:47 a.m. Power cut for 12 minutes. Someone killed the lights before it started. But the real problem wasn't the fire. It was what wasn't in the house anymore. Agent Colburn called me that afternoon. "We believe someone broke in before the fire," he said. "Cleaned out hard drives. Boxes. Maybe more weapons." Someone had cleared the place before lighting it up. Someone with access. Knowledge. And a reason to erase what was left. I asked him if they thought Gary had an accomplice. He didn't answer right away. Then he said something that made my skin crawl. "We're looking into military ties. Someone who would have known your father." That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the shed with a bat across my lap and a pistol tucked under the bench. Every creak in the house made me flinch. Around 2 a.m., my phone lit up. No caller ID. I let it go to voicemail. Whoever it was didn't leave a message. But 20 minutes later, a text came through from a different number. "You weren't supposed to find the journal." That's when I knew. Someone else was watching me. They knew I had it. Or thought I still did. But it was gone. Someone had broken into my house and stolen my dad's journal. I hadn't told anyone about it. Not even the agents. I'd found it in a metal lockbox under the floorboard in the shed, stashed behind a stack of old license plates. It was small, black leather, nothing on the cover. Inside were notes. Maps. Names. Coordinates. And codes, military ones. Some made sense. Some didn't. But one thing stuck out. My dad had written a name again and again in the margins. Barnes. No first name. Just Barnes. Underneath, in shaky handwriting. He lied. He never left. I'd scanned the pages before the break-in. Saved them to a flash drive. I pulled it out and opened the files. One of the pages had a date. July 19th, 1994. Circled in red. I searched it. That was the day a munitions depot in Virginia exploded under unknown circumstances. No deaths were ever confirmed. But the report listed one man missing in the chaos. Lieutenant James Barnes. Retired early. Never found. Next to his name on the official list, my father's signature. A witness. I printed the page, took it to Colburn. His face turned white when he saw it. "You need to leave town," he said. "Today." "What's going on?" I asked. He closed the file slowly. "You weren't the only one Gary tried to frame. There are others. Some already dead. Some vanished. And we think Barnes is still alive." "Where is he?" "We don't know," he said. "But we just found the same handwriting from your dad's journal, on a note left at the scene of another fire." "Another one?" "In Virginia," he said. "Last night." That's when I realized something. This wasn't about me anymore. This was a trail my father left behind. And someone was cleaning it up. One name at a time. I didn't leave town. I packed a bag. Loaded my pistol. Put the flash drive in my sock and duct taped it to my leg. Then I drove, north, not south. Toward Virginia. If Barnes was real, if he was still alive, he was the key. My dad had known something. Something bad enough to make a man fake his death. Bad enough to get other people killed to keep it quiet. I followed the trail the only way I could, through my dad's journal. It led me to a town just outside Roanoke. Quiet place. Mountain fog. Seemed normal on the surface, but I felt it the second I drove through. I stopped at a diner. Asked around about Barnes. The waitress went still. Said, "You want Jimmy? Lives out by Ridge Hollow. Doesn't talk to folks." I drove to the ridge. Dirt road. No signs. Just trees and gravel. I reached the end around dusk. There was a cabin. Rusted roof. Satellite dish pointed crooked. And a man standing on the porch. He was older, built like my dad. Eyes cold. Moved like a soldier, even after all these years. "You're not supposed to be here," he said. "I know," I said. "But I have something that belonged to my father. I think you knew him." "Name?" "Alan. Alan Kessler." He didn't flinch. Just turned and opened the door. Inside, everything was neat. Organized. Military style. Maps on the wall. Police scanners. Weapons, not out, but close. "Your dad," he said, pouring a drink. "He saved my life once. Then I ruined his. I didn't say anything. Just waited. He helped me fake my death. Said it was the only way I could disappear. We had found something, back in '94. Something the Pentagon buried. A program. People like Gary were part of it. What kind of program? Domestic infiltration. Not spying on other countries. Spying on us. Militias, government plants, fake identities. People placed in towns to watch and control. Your neighbor was one of the failures. Went rogue. He handed me a file. Photos. Names. Including Gary's. But not just him, dozens of others. Some in the news. Some I recognized from articles I had seen but forgotten. Bombings. Disappearances. All lone wolves. All framed. What's this got to do with my dad? I asked. He was going to leak it, Barnes said. Last year. Told me he couldn't die with it on his chest. But someone found out. Gary made sure he stayed quiet. You're saying Gary killed him? Barnes nodded once. Cancer was real. But the meds? They were tampered with. I couldn't breathe. Why didn't you come forward? I asked. He looked down. I'm a ghost. I don't exist anymore. That's when the shot rang out. Windows shattered. Barnes hit the floor, bleeding from the shoulder. I dropped and pulled my pistol. Another shot cracked through the door. We were under attack. Barnes crawled to the back room. Go, he growled. There's a trapdoor. Take the drive. Get to the press. I'm not leaving you, I said. He shoved a folder into my chest. You want revenge for your dad? This is it. Names. Proof. Everything. I heard boots on the porch. More than one person. Maybe 3. Maybe 4. I grabbed the drive. Slid through the trapdoor into the crawlspace. I heard Barnes shoot twice, then a scream. Another shot. Then silence. I ran into the woods. Didn't stop for hours. I didn't even cry until I reached a rest stop off I-81. I sat there, blood on my hands, folder in my lap, and cried like a kid. I went public the next day. Gave the folder and the drive to a journalist I trusted in Charlotte. The story broke 2 weeks later. National headlines. Military cover-up, veteran found dead after whistleblower's son exposes black files. The backlash was huge. Hearings. Resignations. At least 6 arrests. Gary's contacts. One was a sheriff. Another worked inside the city planning department. He had approved the drone licenses and helped bury complaints. Barnes' body was found in the cabin. Execution style. The report called it a burglary gone wrong. I knew better. I buried my father again. This time with a new plaque. It read, "He tried to tell the truth." As for me? I left Rock Hill. I change towns every few months. Never stay long. I know I'm still being watched. But I sleep better now. Because the people who tried to make me the villain? They got exposed. And the man who raised me, the one I never really knew, turned out to be the last good soldier left in a war nobody wanted to admit was still going on. They tried to destroy his name. I made damn sure they'd never forget it.